It'll be fine. We'll get enough people.
All right, we're fixing to go live.
Okay, the meeting is live stream. Cool.
Okay. And I'm just going to wait a second or two and make sure this is all working.
You wait for a text. I've got all my text turned off just in case.
That's right. Well,
where were you? Sorry, carry on.
Oh, I was just going to say, I've got to make sure, my wife gives the okay that we're good to go, because as long as Laurel says we're good, we're good. That's how I've learned, it really doesn't matter what you think or anybody else thinks. It's what Laurel thinks. So
well, that's the best way to be.
All right, we're live and there are people coming in, Richard. I'm so excited to have you on. We've been talking for a while now about different things in beekeeping over the years, messaging back and forth. And we've wanted to do this for a while, and, we're just both get busy. So this, I think, is not only going to be fun just to get to, chat, but also it's a big issue that we've already seen cropping up here. And, well, oh, you're having flag issues. Well, we don't have issues like that here in the United States. No, I'm just messing with you. Sorry, I had to pick on you guys. But no, the Asian Hornets that you have over there and what we have potentially over here, it's a big issue. And there are a lot of things that you all are already dealing with. You guys are already experiencing a lot of pressure, and your bees are having to contend with it. And beekeepers are creating products, and there's some products made, and they're just, people are concerned. Social media has really, the last couple of years, pushed it. This murder hornet that's coming to the United States, and it's going to wipe out all of our bees. Of course, everything is going to destroy everything, because that's how you sell stuff. But that's why I want to have you on, so we can get a beekeeper who can kind of rationalize what are the issues, what we can do to make things better for our bees, protect them, and also not paint an image of hopeless gloom and doom. But as beekeepers, we have two choices: to get out of beekeeping or find solutions. So that's why you're here today, is to talk about solutions. So thanks again, Richard, for coming on. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then just take her from there.
Okay, well, as you know, we're on a Zoom. I'm running through YouTube, so I'm going to share my screen and talk a little bit about me. I'm not going to dwell on that too much, because I'm sure a lot of you have seen my stuff already. I have a YouTube channel, and let me just find my. So I run approximately 200 colonies, but it's like 300 with nukes and Mini Plus. That's a Mini Plus frame I'm holding in front of me, and I live in Brittany, which is obviously the northern part of France, or one of the northern regions of France. There's my truck. Let me just play this, and then you can see kind of the big screen. This is where basically I live, and I kind of do most of my work in my Ford Transit, which gets me around. No vehicle's perfect, as you know. I want to have knobbly tires on this. I want to be able to get an apiaries in the winter, but we just accept the fact that we can't. But it does the job, and I run approximately 14 apiaries all around this area. So we're quite busy. I mean, I know a lot of guys always ask, well, how many colonies do you run? And I run at the moment 200, but I'm obviously, as you know, trying to get up to 250, 260. I want to be the positive side of 260, because that's what you really need. It's those extra 50 hives that are your profit, really, when you really are in professional beekeeping, because it's those that, when you have a good year, really make that extra amount of honey that are going to keep you going in the lean years. But I've only been actually a professional for the last 3 years, and it was only last year that I jacked everything else. And I used to do landscape gardening. I jacked that in. And last year, which was my first year without any other income, was the worst year we've ever had in beekeeping in my whole career. So it's kind of, death by trial by death. I've just had to get on and find money and do whatever I can, pick up my tools a bit, do a bit of work here and there. But we're getting there. Now we're all positive about next year, or this year. Where's the time gone? So this is the kind of apiaries we run.
Let me ask you a question. real
Yeah.
quick, Richard, if you don't mind. Do you know, in comparison to like the United States, like what parallels, maybe some US states that you're kind of similar to? Do you know anything about that?
Well, actually, I'm very similar to yours and north of you.
So just a little north of Tennessee or something like that?
Probably a little north on that line, yeah. I did do actually a calculation once, and yeah, because I've been obviously to Mike Palmer's, visited him for a week, and I obviously when at that time I was looking at the parallels. So because you're continental, you get the cold in the winter. We don't get that. We're very much influenced by the English Channel. You see, here is the English Channel. We generally get southwesterlies that come up here, and we get a lot of mild cold weather. Sorry, mild cool weather. We don't really have the cold. If we get weather from the other side, from the east, as that's north above, west to the left, the usual thing, north, south, east, west. If we get weather from the east, it can be bitterly cold, but still not as cold. It's rare if we get more than -10, which I suppose is about maybe 10, 15 Fahrenheit for you guys. Is that about that?
Yeah, that sounds like you're like us, except you of course you have the sea to affect your temperatures even more. Interesting. Yeah. So Tennessee, Kentucky.
Yeah. So I mean, it is variable, but we generally have not very cold winters and not very hot summers. We get up to the 28, 30 degrees centigrade. I suppose that's between 80 and 90 occasionally, but most of the time it's in the 70s to 80s. It's very pleasant for us.
Nice.
So
nice.
It is kind of lovely, but we also get a dearth, and we have a dearth usually from mid-July right through till September. So these are hives in the spring. That was last year. I've got the spring honey coming in on this, and also we're taking a bit of pollen as well. Pollen is something new to me last year. I learned a lot. These pollen traps with my colleague Christian, who I used to work with a lot. We've just kind of gone our own ways with those things, but he taught me a huge amount. And I bought these pollen traps from him because he's basically retiring now. So they work really well. I trap kind of like, I think 10 kilos of pollen, which is quite a bit, which is about 20 pounds for a first guy. I was very happy with that. I learned a huge amount. As I say, I've only been a professional for a couple of years, full time, but I've had hives for 11 years. And I think we're all kind of learning from each other, which is great, which is why it's so cool,
Well, you don't have to be a professional to share good information, and you can be a professional and share bad information for sure too. Some of my favorite people to talk to and balance things out are hobby or sideline level beekeepers. And one of them runs under 20 colonies, and just every year, just is a really respectable beekeeper, keeps his bees in good shape, maintains them. Is not buying bees. He replenishes his own stock, raises his own queens. Some of the videos of yours that kind of brought me to your channel, right around the time I was getting to YouTube, I was looking and seeing what other people were doing. And yours was one of the channels that I looked at, and you had several good videos. Especially, I enjoyed the ones, and I've gone back to multiple times, the queen rearing videos, keeping the virgin queens. For those of you who haven't checked out Richard Noel's channel, please do that. He's got some great videos on queen rearing, getting your cell builders up, maintaining virgins that have just come out in the incubator. And that's something that I was not familiar with. And virgins are very sensitive if you don't treat them right, especially. And so, getting to see that video is really helpful. And that's what all this YouTube is about. It's about connecting with people and trying to find solutions. And of course, we don't have these Asian hornets, and we don't have that yet. But as we know, with a lot of invasive species, it seems by and large, most of them get over here. And what we've been very poor on in the past is communication as beekeepers. We're very, very seldom ahead of the game. So that's what I'm hoping with this chat. And I know that's what's going to happen, is we're going to talk to you who have had a lot of experience with these things and are getting more experience all the time. So if we do have that issue, we're going to be way ahead of where we would have been had we just, oh no, we got a problem. And now what?
Well, getting back to what you said before about having beekeeper friends who were I think that you've got to get a balance. You've got to find beekeeper friends who are the same level as you, but you've also there's an expression, you've got to surround, if you want to find greatness, you've got to find someone or something that's greater than what you want to aim for. Okay, so you work with people that are the same level as you, but you also look at people above you and how they're doing. But the problem is with professional beekeepers is they're not, for us here, I'm not migratory, and a lot of professional beekeepers are migratory, and it's very difficult to actually learn a lot from them because they're never in any one place at any time. Whereas if you find someone who's local to you but is pretty like got a fair number of hives, I think they're the people you learn a lot from, because they know exactly what their flows are doing because they've been there. And that's the key. You've just got to know your flows. You've got to know, you know exactly what's going to happen and when, within a few days. Sometimes it's early, sometimes it's late, you know. But yeah, I mean, obviously getting on to the Asian Hornet thing, when I was beekeeping about 6 years ago, we started getting them here. Because you'll see from my plan and my map in a minute, I call it a plan because a plan in France is a map. Excuse me, but you have to just bear with me. I sometimes get my expressions wrong now. When I first started getting a few, it wasn't really a problem because we'd get one nest here and one nest there, and we were all like panicking about it. So when you're talking about we'll learn a lot. Well, we'd been kind of had no choice. We've lost a lot of colonies, and yes, that's what we're going to do. It doesn't mean that every hornet has the same behavior, because obviously the murder hornet is similar to the Asian hornet and also similar to the common hornet because it's the same VESPA genus. That's where it's from. They're all wasps. They're all the wasp genus. Wasps and hornet are all the same genus. But the hornets generally are globe nests that hang in a tree somewhere or hang in a shed. Whereas the Asian hornets we get originally were more in trees, at the top of trees in the summer. So that's just explaining they're slightly different, but we all can learn from that. And we hope that we can pass on. But I want to talk a lot today about Washington State and how well they've done in controlling the murder hornet. And I also want to desensationalize this murder hornet thing, because it was really the wrong thing to say, but it kind of wasn't, because it got across the message, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
There was a load of reels going around with people going, I can't do this anymore, release the murder hornets. You know, it was like this kind of joke going around, and everyone's kind of got this thing about the murder hornets. Well, they don't really exist, because the VESPA mandriana, which is the giant Japanese hornet, or the giant hornet, which is referred to, is the biggest hornet, and it is a problem. But if you don't attack it, it won't attack you. It's very much like our Asian hornet. So let me just go forward a bit. I've got this. I'll just show you what our summer chestnut is like. I'm not sure how this is going to play where all of you people are in America, but this is what we have in the summer. We have this period in the summer where we have a massive chestnut. It's about a month long, and it really is a good flow. So some of you might be able to see that, some of you might not. It's a bit cloudy. It's crystal clear this end. So excuse me, I'm just keeping liquid going. That's what we aim for in the summer. If we see that and get the right weather, we can do really well. And then we do some cell building. That's one of my Mike Palmer's 10 over 10, and that's the 10 frames with the pollen frame out, just ready to take those grafts. That's me doing the grafts. We do all of this the same as everybody. We're doing this right from usually mid-May is when we like to start grafting, but we are weather dependent, and we don't mind waiting here. We're not in a race to make the first queens, if you know what I mean. We know that the weather can be so up and down, and it can be cold, so we kind of just wait a little bit. And if sometimes we get good early nukes made and good things done, you know, so it's good. So excuse the picture. That's my cells coming out on one day after them going in, so that's day 2, a grafting day, and then I put them in finishers. I generally use finishers here, and then day 10 or day 9, day 10 we harvest the cells. And we get nice cells from my finishes. I generally put 14 in a cell, and that's not my grafting success. I actually gap up my cells and take the dud ones out, so it looks pretty impressive, but they're not always as good as that. So you know, but it is what it is. We get nice raw jelly in the cells, so that's what we're after. Good, strong cells made under the best conditions. You know, that's what we like.
Those are some great looking cells right there.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I mean, as I said, we like to look at the raw jelly, and it was Mike Palmer that taught me all of this, you know, sustainable beekeeping. I went over to see him. I came back, I was like blown away, and I thought, well, where do I start? But you just start, you just pick up the pieces, you try it, you do different things, and from then on I've never looked back, you know. And I couldn't have done it without him, for sure, without, you know, his generosity and kindness. But that's another thing anyway. But it just proves the point, you can do it. And I wish all of our frames were all like this.
Yeah, exactly.
But obviously, we love taking pictures of the best frames. We use these plastic frames They're made by Dadant. Sorry, they are Dadant frames, but they're made by Nico. And all you guys in America will obviously say Nicot, but because I've got to say that because loads of people in France get wound up by it, but it's Nico. But it doesn't matter anything.
And that's the same. That's the queen rearing system that you were using as well.
Exactly.
And yes, we say Nicot here, Nicot, but it's Nico if you're really stuck up. I mean, if you're French. Sorry.
No, that's what one of these wonderful things we have with the Anglo-French, the American, French, English, diversity. It's brilliant. Yeah.
It's fine.
So they're actually, these are plastic frames. They're called Baticad. They're made by Nicot. And what happens is when there's no honey on these, they're semi-built. And I think there's some products out now in America anyway that you can buy that are semi-built for brood frames or semi-drawn out in plastic. And then what you do is if you want to reuse the frames because they get pollen in them or they get wax moth, you can pressure wash them. But then these are on 8s. If you look, there's 8 in a colony in a box. But when we rebuild these, they have to build on 10. So we have to have some boxes with 10 configuration because otherwise they'll actually build in between here. And it's you know what it's like, it's a right pain. The bees just build all over the place. But as long as you follow that, it works really well. So when you've got mostly 8s on your supers, we call it 8 configuration, you obviously get a lot more honey for less work because it's in 8 frames rather than 10. So that's kind of how we run it here. So over to the Asian Hornet. This is a little bit of an extract from the talk I did. Well, I do because of the problems with COVID. I've been doing some Zooms, and I've been doing them since spring last year. So I was really dread doing them at first, but I absolutely love it. And the great thing is you don't actually get to see everyone in front of you, even though there's like 200 people coming through the door. So it's not quite so nerve-wracking, but it's great fun. You meet a lot of really good people, and I do several talks, and the one I do is Asian Hornet. So I've taken a few frames. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, just so I can show you how we do it here with our Asian Hornet, okay? So as you know, as I said before, the Hornets are from the VESPA family. The one on the right, I think that's the right. This is the French call it the Frenlon common, but it's the common European Hornet. You have this one in America, and its name is actually Vespa Crabo. Okay, so they're not, as far as we're concerned, they're not very aggressive as compared to the one on the left, which is the Asian Hornet, Vespa velutina. Its actually full name is Vespa velutina nigrithorax, but that's enough. We just say VV. That's what the name you identify them. But the difference is, if I'll give you a comparison. If you have a nest in your shed and it's say in a wood pile and you disturb it, you'd be very unlucky if you got stung by the one on the right, the common hornet. If you move the nest for the one on the left, you better start running. And I mean running fast, because within a minute or two, there'll be 200 hornets on you, and not just stinging you once, there'll be multiple stings. And that's the problem with these hornets. It's not that they're really any greater in numbers, really. They can have big nests, but it's more they're so defensive and so efficient. They're actually an incredible insect. And it's unfortunately we have to kill them because they're actually fascinating and incredibly diverse and dynamic. But obviously whenever we can kill them, we do. This is this is a picture you had on, we posted the other day. And if you look at this picture, it is a little bit distorted. And this is the picture that was born after the murder hornet came out. Someone took this picture, they blew it up. I'll show you a size comparison in a minute, because actually it's not that big, but that is the giant Japanese hornet, okay, Vespa mandriana, okay, and this is a completely different hornet, and it comes originally from Japan, but it's obviously all in Asia now as well, most of Asia, I believe. So and when obviously we had Asian Hornets here, the press was sensationalizing it. And we, like you said before, about we're all going to die. There's going to be the takeover of bees. There's going to be no insects around. It's going to take them all out. I say, well, no, they're still keeping bees in the Gironde area when they first came in 2004, and you'll see that in a minute. But they are a problem. But this obviously is another problem that incurred in Washington State, and we'll talk about that as well. But I'm just trying to give you a picture of what was done really well where you are and what wasn't done well in Europe. So this is some of the size. You can see the Asian giant hornet is generally much bigger, and the top here, the biggest or the easiest way to to identify is when you look at an Asian giant hornet, you've got like a white band, a really thick white creamy band around its front head. That's how but I obviously know them because I've seen them a lot. I've seen the different pictures, and we've got a lot of common and a lot of Asian hornets here. So, and this is give you some idea of how the Asian hornet is spread through Europe. So these incursions here in England, there's no Asian hornets actually established in England as far as we know. There's been incursions. It says districts colonized before 2020, but in England, because they've got an excellent app they've made that helps you identify the hornet, and they've had brilliant publicity, and they've got a lot of foot soldiers per square meter. The hornets haven't proliferated. Every nest they found, they've tracked down through various means and destroyed it.
Awesome.
But in Europe, what happened is the original problem was there was 2 loads of pottery that came over in shipping containers, and autumn the previous year, I think it was, I'm not saying they came from China, but they came from somewhere in Asia. The Asian hornets went into the container while it was open, hibernated, as we find dead wasps sometimes in wood pile, something like that. And then come the spring, the container was opened in France, and they came out, and then off they went to start making a nest. But it just shows you that, so 2004, there is a progressive map I could show you of how they've invaded. But now, the worst thing is, for us, we're right up here, obviously. So we think we're right on the limit of where they can make sizable nests, because we are quite cool in the spring. So it depresses their ability to build up quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But if you imagine, if you're down in northern Spain where it's warm and wet, and you've got an Asian hornet there, the nests get going quicker, they get more prolific quicker, and they do a lot more damage. And some of the pictures I've seen from beekeepers in Spain now, and and northern Portugal, are just horrendous. You know what I mean? It's really a nightmare for them, really a nightmare. So let's go to our next slide. Give you a little bit of idea of the life cycle. The same as wasps, all hornets overwinter in December. You have drones and queens mating, all produced from the same colonies. And then they go off in May, come back, and then they overwinter in December, January, and February. And they're actually quite active even November, which is actually quite a good help for us. And then come the spring, they emerge, they're desperate for sugar, so we can trap. So this line is the best trapping period. That basically is when we can trap all the founding queens, or as many as we can, because these queens are hungry. It's one of our ways. It's like knowing how to treat varroa when they're broodless, kind of thing. It's one of the ways we know that we've worked out. We've all been taught that basically these queens emerging in the spring, because they've overwintered, they're going to be hungry, they're searching for fruits. So we put baited traps out where we think they're going to be. And then we trap them all the way through March, April, May, June. And by June time, the little nest they made has actually grown into like a football size. And then they fly off with the workers that she's raised. And then I'll make a nest somewhere in the top of a tree. And now in brambles, they seem to have diversified a bit in their habits. So they'll make a nest anywhere they like, but they will make a nest. And then that's when the problem starts in front of our hive. So, but by the time we get to July, August, our beekeeping is finished. So that is one little weapon we've got. We finished doing our bees, but we've got to keep the hornet numbers down. And this is when this part between July and August is when they're basically making these huge nests and then producing queens. In September, October, the queens come out, and then that's the end of the cycle. It's just the cycle that happens with wasps every year, with hornets every year. So we have to work something to this. So we trap in the spring. Let me find you. This is an example. This is a friend called me and said, I think I've got a wasp nest in my in my doorway. This is exactly what the hornets do. And this wasp net turned out to be actually an Asian hornet nest. There's the queen hornet in there. And you can see her, she's just making a small golf ball nest. That's a founding queen, and that's going to be responsible for probably 400 workers in the summer, causing merry hell later on. So if you can kill her now, it's so easy. Do you know what I mean? So that's what we try and look out for in the spring. You know, just an example of, you wouldn't think it's there. There she is. You can see these little larvae she was making. what happens is she'll make, as I say, a small nest, and it grows to about the size of a small football. But then eventually the workers take over the work she was doing, and she just stays inside and lays.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and if I may add, just to, you're already saying this, but just to clarify for myself and anyone who didn't understand, this really goes along with a lot of other beekeeping, like say small hive beetles or something. They're easiest at the beginning of the season, get ahead of the game, cut back the numbers as early in the season as possible when they're vulnerable. And, this, obviously these are way worse than yellow jackets. And we have had some European hornet problems, just a tiny bit here. But, these things are way worse. And just getting those queens early in the season makes a big difference, because it's just like varroa mites late in the season. When they're at their worst, that's when you need your colonies to be at your best going into winter. And that's the same way with these hornets, is that when they're really doing the damage is when your bees need to be at their best prepping that winter cluster. It's really a problem.
Absolutely. So like we say in beekeeping, you've got to seize that moment. Again, like varroa, again, like small hive beetle, again with hornets, you've got to seize the moment when it's the best time and work really hard at it, because it really does pay off later in the year.
Mm-hmm.
This is to give you an idea. So there's an Asian hornet nest in that tree. Can you see it right at the top? This is how difficult it is to get to them. Okay, there it is. All right. So I'm just making the point. This is a poplar tree that's lost. I don't know if you know poplar trees. They lose their leaves really early, late July, early August, September. All the leaves fall off because it's one of the first trees to lose its leaves here. But this wasn't a big nest, I agree, but it still probably produced queens. So that's one of the nests that we cut out of a tree up the road from where I work. You can see inside we've got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nest building cavities. Those probably, you can see these at larvae here. They're probably all this time of year. They're probably all young queens and drones just about to be released. So we got this one in time. But this is actually an old boys workshop up the road. A guy who's no longer, sadly died last year, but he had one of these magical workshops with everything in all these little places, and it's really cool. So there's another video, just shows you this is near our apiaries in a valley. One nest there. There's my car in the road, and look above, we've got another nest just appeared.
Oh my goodness!
This was a bad year. Do you know what I mean? But they just appear out of nowhere, and you go, I must have driven past that 30 times in the summer, and you have no idea they're there. So that was the nest I showed me holding. That was cut out of a plum tree. A plum also loses its leaves very quickly in the late summer when you have a dearth. And this is how dynamic the insects are. They were still flying after a light frost, one of the first radiation frosts we get in the autumn, 7 degrees in the morning, and all the hornets were flying backwards and forwards. So it's beyond belief, but because this person has obviously been mowing his grass the whole summer, doing his wood pile, and hasn't even noticed them in his plum tree, which is only literally 2-3 meters above the ground. So they're not a problem. As I said, when you get further down south in France, this is what you can expect. And I do say also that this was taken at the very start of the main problems with hornets. And when you get an invasive species that comes into a new area, you very often see them proliferate really well. So they might not do as well as they did for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's the same genetic line. There was only 2 hornet queens. They traced the genetic line back in France, and there was only 2 founding queens that have the same line, which is actually very useful, because if they find any hornets that aren't from the same line, they know what it is. And because of that, they reckon that the actual strength of the line is not as good as it should be, because the drones aren't healthy. There's not a good cross all the time. So we think also that the after the initial introduction, there's a little bit of evidence to say now that they're changing their habits and not quite so ferocious as they were. But that's kind of beekeepers' opinion. Other people disagree, but they're monstrous. Monstrous.
Well, it could be maybe they're not as productive because there's a lot more of them and they're competition to each other as well. I don't know.
It could be, or it could be that the other nests have become a little bit weaker because they've bred with the same daughters and queens for years and years now, and they're perhaps just not as vigorous as they were. I don't know. we think, I think the word is inbreeding. There may be some of that coming through. This is an Asian hornet's nest in front of my house. I had no idea it was there, and it was. I hope you can see this video. Basically, that's my house in front, and there it is. That's the entrance. The hornets had removed all the leaves, and there's the nest. I had no idea it was there till I found it, until I got the local commune to come and treat it for me. As I said, nests are easy to kill, but it's just getting the treatment to them. That's the issue. You can't get up a tree. You can't use a drone. They've tried all sorts of things. One of the only ways we have found works really well is the Trojan horse method, where you can actually paint some mild poison on the back or the thorax of the hornets, and then they take as a protein and they take it back to the nest. And it is very specific to the nest. But then you've got other people that say, well, there's a tiny bit of poison in that nest. Yes, I agree. But the problem with Asian hornets, and it's important to state this, it's not just bees they take. It's an area around the nest, probably of about 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers radius, okay? And it just depresses every single insect in the area. And as I say, 2 kilometers, it's probably more than that. But if you've got a high insect level, so things like birds, bats, moths, all your insects, all your other animals that rely on each other for that ecosystem have a depressed time. They can't, like, swallows catching flies. Asian hornets take everything. They'll take spiders out of webs. They'll take caterpillars off of trees. It's amazing. They are just protein catchers. So that's why we have to kill them. That's why we have to reduce them down, because it has such an effect on the ecosystem around us. And until it balances out, see, common hornets aren't really a problem. They're kind of indigenous. They eat a lot of the aphids, the bad insects, the flies, mosquitoes, all that. And if you've ever watched them in front of a hive, they're not very good at catching bees. They're a bit slow. They're a bit staggered. So we're like, well, live and let live. If there was one right next to my hive, I might swat it if it's a pain. If it tried to sting me, I usually leave them alone and let them get on with it. It doesn't really bother me. There's the nest. You can see they treated it there. 1 squirt of a pyrethroid-based powder, and the nest is dead in like 20 minutes. So, and there's a picture of the galleries inside the nest. You can see all these are. It's pretty impressive.
That's the way it is with small hive beetles and a lot of these creatures. Is they're really fascinating from a standpoint of these things are really just unique and creative and powerful. However, they're a big problem with honeybees. Honeybees are just, especially a healthy colony, is just a mother lode of nutrition for anything, whether it's a bee eating type of bird or a hornet like this. I think tanagers, whenever they move, as they're migrating through, we'll have like 30 or 40 tanagers move through, and you can just watch them go after bees. Snap, snap, snap. But honeybees are just so full of fats and protein, and they're filled with a nice honey filled center. So yeah, it's almost like candy to these creatures. It's got energy. It's got everything that they need. And of course, if you have 30, 40 hives to a yard, averaging even just 30,000 bees per colony, that it is literally just an endless buffet for these creatures. But there are babies, though.
It's fascinating, really, how we kind of have bees and then we forget about how amazing they are sometimes. And you just saying that, it makes you think, yeah, you're right. I mean, but look at this hornet. These are the larvae that were in the nest. You imagine where all that protein has come to feed those larvae, and probably every one of these has got larvae in it that have been fed. You see, it's frightening how efficient they are, So this was, I got called to, I used to do a lot of swarm trapping. And when I first started trapping swarms, I had my name out with the local department and said, I get a couple of calls. Can you come and get this bee's nest from the top of my oil tank?
Yeah.
So I went to the top of the oil tank, and this was their bee's nest. I went, So this was one I obviously called the pest destroyer. It's pretty easy to destroy them because they're right at access level. This was literally just under like a lean-to next to the house, so it was low. But it just gives you some idea. You imagine if you started to mess with that, you better start running.
I'd be really concerned. Of course, at 33, I can run pretty fast, but I would be really concerned, like if a child or something was messing around and had those start attacking them. That would be my fear with something like that.
Some of the deaths have occurred when people are, for instance, they're clearing like bracken with a tractor and they've left the window open. They don't even know they've touched the nest. And next thing you know, they've got like 30 or 40 Asian hornets streaming into the cab. I mean, what can you do? You can wipe them off. They still come back and sting you. You've literally got to just drive and drive and drive if you can, or just close your window and do something. It's absolutely frightening. And other people have died. The other thing I will say is it's not so much that, as I said, these hornets are any more venomous than any other hornet. It's the fact that they sting so many times and so easily. So someone who might be slightly allergic to bees, but not really badly, might get away with a sting in the summer. But if they got multiple stings, it would take them over that precipice. You know, that's what I'm trying to show. These are super duper efficient efficient hornets. Anyway, we do trap at the end of the summer as well, because often we find in October, November, we get a warm weather, and we're having warmer autumns now. We seem to be having. Say no more about that, but yeah. And then what happens is all these queens come out of the nest. And what happens is if you don't have lots of traps up by then, so obviously in the spring you mop up as many as you can, but you can't get them all. And then you sometimes trap again in the summer, and you keep an eye on things, and you can use the Trojan horse method if you get a nest nearby early in the year that's starting to show signs of a permanent presence of hornets in front of your hives. Okay, so when we get this, I don't know if you can see this, you should play. That's a colony hawking in front of the hive. And this is where you watch the bees there. See how they're all clinging to the front, and they're almost offering support to their colleagues when they come back in. And when we see this, we know that there's hornets around. And this is what we don't like, because we know that colony is now stressed. And the colony is stressed right when we don't want it. Like you said before, we've tried to keep them hornet free, and we've got them through most of the year, but this is the time they are starting to make those winter bees. This is the time where you might have seen the video I did on caging my queens. If I've got my queen's cage and this happens, I'm in serious poop, because when I release that queen, she might not lay because the whole colony isn't bringing any food, and it's losing workers because it's losing workers away from the colony, and they're not coming back with the food and the messages to the colony. So this is deadly. When you see this is deadly. But you see behind it, we have a green door. And the green door isn't snapped down shut, because I probably forgot to snap it shut, but it's still doing most of the job. That is a 5.5 mil gap that bees can go through, but the hornets can't. So in the worst case scenario, if the colony, which sometimes happens, gets covered in hornets, literally the whole thing gets covered and the bees retreat inside, they still can't get inside to start polishing off the bees. So we put these doors on everything, they snap down well, so it's something we can do. And if we're not there, we know that the colony, at least it's kind of not going to get pilfered. Because the problem we have is, as I said before, you go through the summer, you keep the numbers down, and then what happens is you get this flash release of a lot of queen hornets. And if you have a good ivy year like we have this year, they home in on the smell because they're homing in on the sugars. They're not particularly looking to eat other bees. They're just going to find easy food, and they smother the colony. Literally, you can get 30 or 40 on the front of your hive. And that's when having these doors can save a colony or not. It's just a little thing, but you know, you do what you can. That's the data hives we have. This is what we do with some other types of French hive. You can see we make the same gap. You just put a block of wood the same width, and then they can't crawl under that. And this is what we do with our nukes. We put those doors in front of the nukes, but it works quite well. This is the traps we put out in November. You can see these are probably queens, the size of the abdomen on them. They look really clean and fresh. That's just like some kind of scare movie, you know. It's
those are big.
They are, and there's just loads of them, you know. And the good thing is that time of year, it is really easy to catch a lot of them because they're just hanging around looking for somewhere to go, you know. So if you put lots of traps out in your apiaries, then you can mop up a lot that otherwise would probably hibernate somewhere. So this was actually a friend of mine who's English speaking, lives in France. He put out a trap at the bottom of his garden with cider vinegar, white wine and cider vinegar and some beer. And that's what he caught in like 3 days. This is what happens when a nest empties out. So I can try to show you the numbers. It's pretty frightening. But these are all dead. This nest here, there it is. There's the nest. You just can't see it. But that nest was the one that emptied all these out.
And again, I'm sorry, just to put it in perspective for myself. I mean, look at all of those right there, just in that short period. How many days did you say that he caught those in?
That's probably about 2 or 3 days.
2 or 3 days. And yeah. He obviously didn't catch the whole nest, not even close.
No.
And so, but even just that many right there, for a 2-week period with that being unchecked, just going through and just constantly going after bees and stressing out your colonies at the wrong time of the year, chipping away at those percentages. It's just, it's a lot. That's a lot of damage.
You can totally understand now how having a 2-week or 3-week period like that is such at the wrong time. You know, it's like, oh my God, if you have this position, you're better off moving the hives to another apiary where there's at least less hornets. That's what we do. That's one of the things you can do. So there's the nest. You can hardly see it. And then as the leaves drop their leaves, all the queens disperse, and then you're left with the nest in the tree, but it's empty. This is what I do in the spring. We used to use a mixture of malty beer, white wine, and blackcurrant juice, but don't worry. We use the cheapest beer and the cheapest white wine. It's not. It's not. I can imagine faces going, "White wine, beer."
Well,
I don't use it now.
I'm sure Ian will be glad to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying anything. So you can see this is what we get, and we get very little what we call bycatch. In the spring, the hornets fly really early, so you don't tend to catch the indigenous common VESPA crabo, the common hornet, which have got big queens. These are Asian hornets. You can clearly see that. This is me putting traps out of my apiary. I do a lot of traps. That's the VESPA Catch we use by Vita Pharma, but I'm not a big using what everyone uses kind of person. We all like to do things differently, but these traps work.
That's really all that matters.
I've trialed the bottle traps, I've trialed the bow. And the great thing about these traps, if you look, you only got 20 or 30 mil in the bottom of each trap. And you don't need much, because what happens now, we've learned that when one hornet goes in, a lot of the hornets follow him. So it's pretty good. And you can, when there's a load, like I showed you at the end of the summer, you can put a trap like that, just a bottle on its side with some white wine vinegar in it and some beer. It works really well. That's what we tend to, when we get a lot in one area, we'll hang 2 traps between some nukes, and they fill up pretty quick.
Wow, that one on the right's almost that's almost.
I know, yeah, you can see it's like there's no room. You know, you've got to literally empty them out. That was probably a week at least, but if you just get that one period right, you can mop up a lot really quick, and you seem to keep the entrances clear. So this is one of my colleagues' apiaries where he just was trying different things, but they say if you've got 20 odd hives, you need at least about 10 traps in one apiary if you've got a high presence. This is the bait we use now. We don't use the white wine, beer, and blackcurrant juice. We use this. This is what they make. It's about 26 euros a bottle. It's not cheap. Sorry, 36 euros. But you know what? That is enough for 100 traps. And it works really well. So you save time, because you're not having to get loads of bottles of beer, cheap beer, and empty it out. All that's gone. You don't have to buy all that. You just use that, mix it up, and you save a couple of hours each day. Because you need to, every time you go to an apiary, you need to rotate the traps.
And so that
it's something really we have to do. Yeah?
That really attracts them right there, though they seem to hone in on that.
It attracts them. I've done some trials. I think if one of my videos you look, it's in October, November. I've got the original traps with the white wine and beer in and blackcurrant juice, and above it I've got the other traps that you've just seen, the one in the picture there, and that one in the picture actually has double the amount of hornets in. So I've stopped using the old traps now, because they're actually not that efficient. So,
I watched that video, and yeah, I mean the ones with the homemade recipe did halfway decent. I mean to look at it just at that one, you're thinking that's doing a pretty good job. But then when you showed those other traps,
that's why I showed that one first, because
it was like, wow, that's getting a lot more of them, and that's what you want.
But you wonder, well, if I hadn't had the one underneath, would I have still got those in the top trap? So it's like, you do what you can. But what we found now is that if you hang the traps at the back of the hive and you've got those green doors on, what a lot of hornets do is, if there's a lot that come out of the nest, they go around the hive looking for a way in, because they can smell the honey. And that's when you just hang a trap right on the handle at the back of the hive. I should have a picture, but I haven't got one here. And then they seem to all go in this little hole because they think they're getting into the hive, and you catch loads like that. It's amazing how simple little things work really well. So just a word on it. Asian hornets cause colony stress. At the same time, there is often a dearth, which is what we get. Hornets hunting or hawking are only a sign of the problem. The biggest issue is the forager bees that are not returning with the food and messages for the colony, because they're being hunted elsewhere. So you see some at the front, you think, oh, it's not that bad. But actually, it's bad news somewhere else. Queens stop laying, little or no winter bees made, and huge stresses. And it's a very, very fragile time. Colonies collapse just like Varroa death, but sprinkle a bit of Varroa on that as well. And suddenly in November, you've got no bees in your colony. You're going, oh, it was Varroa, but it probably was, but it was also the stress of Asian hornets.
Now, can you imagine, I'm just saying again, like southern states here in the United States, if we get this as a problem, and I'm in Tennessee, that's mid-range, so it's going to be somewhat similar to what you're dealing with. But for folks down in Texas, Florida, California, anywhere like that, and there's places you just have long dearth periods. So nutritionally, when there's a dearth, your bees usually live about a week or more less than they normally would. So their lives are already shorter because they're conserving on resources. Then if you have some pressure from mites, and then you have pressure from this and small hive beetles all in that late season, I mean, it's a recipe for disaster. And that's why really, I mean, my dad said this to me a million times as a kid. I hate this saying almost. I've heard it so many times, but it's true. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And like you said, getting them really late in the year, going for those queens, trapping early in the season, going for those queens. Just you got to stay ahead of these things. And it's a yearly problem, but I'm so thankful that we're able to have you on, because this is something that we can be ahead of the game, and maybe we won't get them, but we haven't been very successful. We don't have a good track record with keeping invasive species out.
I think I would argue, I think you have, but I know you've had a lot of
for now. I know
you've had, but I know you could argue that you've had other things like small hive beetle coming over the years, and we've got Varroa that's coming over the years. Yes,
sure.
But I'll talk about the US Day in a minute. Sorry, the Washington State, how they've done a really good job. Just quickly, this is Apis cerana japonica, which obviously is a bee that naturally balls hornets in Japan. They're only native to Japan, unfortunately, but obviously what they do, you might have seen it on National Geographic, things like that. They actually allow a hornet to come into the colony because they know that when that hornet enters, this is the giant Japanese hornet, by the way, the same one you had in Washington State. But the bees in Europe, European honeybees, haven't got anywhere near the defenses of this. They just sit there and say, cut my head off, which is what they do. But these guys in Japan, the existing domestic bee there has this ability to ball the bee, and they heat up the bee by vibrating their wings, and they heat it up to a temperature just critical to where the bees would die, but slightly cooler, but it's enough to kill the hornet. And it cooks the hornet, and they just kick it out the door. And they know, they've evolved over thousands of years, that if they don't kill that hornet, and they try and be defensive to it straight away, it'll fly off and go, hey lads, and they'll bring the whole lot back with them, and they'll just massacre it. Whereas if they take that one out, so they allow it into the colony, and then when they're ready, they pounce on it and ball it, it can't go back and tell the others where it is. It's an amazing defense strategy. Mm-hmm. So it's just to point that out. But none of our bees over here do that with the Asian hornet. We have had incidences where we think it's happened a bit, but we've never actually seen it. Okay, so there is some genetics there, but it basically isn't sufficient enough over here to say, oh, it's all right, the bees will deal with it. So what I love about your American publicity, track, don't whack. This was brilliant. This is kind of similar to what they do in the UK. They had this great positive message of saying, look, if you see something you're not sure what it is, don't just squash it. Try and work out where it is, report it, get a photo if you can. We've all got mobile phones there, well, most of us have. Have a look, tell someone and find out what it is, and just look in inset books and try and compare it.
Now, I'm sorry. Can I say one thing real quick?
Yeah.
Can you go back to that slide that you were just on? So this was something that I wasn't aware of until I talked to you about all of this. Are they correct here saying report Asian giant hornets? Is that actually correct for the Japanese? Because there's a difference between what we have, right? Am I getting ahead? I'm sorry. But
no, you're right. Because this is what I talked about before. It's one word away from the murder hornet, but this is Washington State. They didn't say the murder hornet because we call it the giant. Over here, we'd say the giant Japanese hornet, VESPA mandriana. Okay, that's its correct Latin name, VESPA mandriana, but it's called also the giant Japanese hornet. We call ours the Asian hornet, only the Asian hornet. So if you say the giant Asian hornet, that's kind of okay. We can work on that. So it identifies it as being the biggest one, the giant one, that's okay. You know, the
Okay.
murder hornet thing was really wrong, to be honest. You know, the press just jumped on it. You know,
but they love clicks, man. But so it would be correct to say you all have the Asian Hornet, and we could say we have the giant Asian Hornet.
You have the giant Asian Hornet or the giant Japanese Hornet.
Yeah, I think we'll probably say Japanese Hornet.
It's past tense. You don't have it because you guys did such a good job. Because this is also the app. I'm just going back a bit. I've got the slides not in the right order. This is the app they have in the UK, and they made an app to give to beekeepers and people who like beekeepers are brilliant at educating people around. Because you know when you get chatting to beekeeper, they never stop talking. Personified here.
Yeah.
Right. Basically, beekeepers tell other people what they might see and what to look out for. And they say, oh, download this app if you're not sure. And beekeepers have used this in the UK through the BBKA, through the National Bee Unit in the UK, and they've actually been able to identify hornets from this app. So it's just an idea that some of you guys in America might know someone else who says, hey, let's bring out a national app that could help identify invasive species, especially hornets for beekeepers. You know, it's just an idea, but it works. We've got modern technology. This is another thing we can bring in and use at our disposal. It costs virtually nothing and it works. It's not exactly rocket science, is it? An app is nothing these days, you know. So I just wanted to show you that. This is taken off Facebook. These are the guys from Washington State after they're tracking down nest. This is what Washington State did that the French didn't do. Okay, I'm not criticizing the French, but I can't not criticize them because they could have thrown everything at the Asian Hornet and they didn't. And we all said at the time when they had the chance, you could have got the army in, you could have destroyed trees. It wouldn't matter. It would have recovered, but you'd have stopped the overall effect for literally millennium after. Now in Europe, we have this invasive hornet that is a total pain in the backside that we're never going to get rid of. And every year it's going to be a problem of a greater or lesser extent. And all the insects are going to suffer from it. So hats off to you guys in America for doing what you did because they tracked it down, things like that. They managed to do the trapping technique. They found that, see, there's an Asian giant hornet there. They found the trees, they tracked the nest down, and the results I've seen, there was one nest they found at the end of 2020. They got to it too late. They think that the daughters were produced, which they were. Last year, they found two nests, 2021, and the interesting thing was they traced the genetics, and both those queens came from the original nest in 2020, and they got those two nests before they released queens. That's what a brilliant job is. That's what, you know, back in time for tea and metals is all about, as far as I'm concerned. The good they've done by working to do that is just brilliant. So how do we find Asian hornets nests over here? We do track and trace. You can do bait wick stations. I'm going to show some pictures of what Jersey do. I showed you Jersey before. They've also been trying radio tracking, catching and releasing tagged hornets. You put a little radio tracker on, they go directly back to the nest in the tree. So it shows you where the nest is. But then you still got to get to the tree to get into the nest to treat it, which is the problem. Now, they're also trying some dog tracking. If you see the nest, often underneath the hornet's nest, you see a lot of urea. As the nest works, there's a hole at the bottom and you get this plume. If you were looking at it on imagine like a heat sink picture, or it wouldn't actually be the heat, but it's like a plume, you know, like dissipating out of this urine. When I had, I've got an owl box here and I had a hornet's nest in it once, and the bottom of it, 2 foot underneath where the nest was just really damp and full of rancid waste. And that's what it is. And dogs actually can track this, and they can sniff it out. They can be trained to do it. So it's absolutely fascinating how broad this goes, you know.
Dogs are crazy like that. It's really impressive what they can train some of those dogs to be able to do.
It is. So that's basically how we do it. This is Jersey, where I used to live when I was born. And unfortunately for Jersey, they are surrounded by the French coast, which means that they are going to get constantly reinfected with Asian hornets. Now, for us in France, we just haven't got the resources to deal with it, because you look, there's a lot of coastline there, and there's miles and miles of nothing. I wouldn't say nothing, but it's just not the people to go, let's see if we can find some Asian hornets. They don't have that resource, you know. They're not beekeepers, they're not out looking like we would, you know. And sure, unfortunately, you will have that in America as well, because the landscape is vast. So hats off to you guys for dealing with it. This is what they do. You first create bait stations. You have attractants in bottles, and then you got a little wick, and the wick gets soaked up. You put them out. You work out where the where the wick, well, you watch it, and when an Asian hornet lands, you catch it, but you let it go, and you can time it to how long it takes to come back. And there's a formula you can use to work out how far the nest is away. That's one method. Okay. So then obviously we, believe it or not, we actually put tags on Asian hornets, and then you can see how much they come back to the bait station. And you can do this in America because you can learn a lot by their habit, by seeing how much they frequent. They'll come back 2 or 3 days later with a number on them. You go, someone's numbered that with a queen marker. This is really freaky, but it's what we do to track them. And also on the radio tracking, there's a device they use. It's like a T cut into some perspex. They slide the hornet in there, and the tracker, they hold it, and she has to be cooled so she doesn't get too stressed. But then you release her, and then she'll fly off back to the net, or that's a worker hornet will fly off to the nest, and you can identify where the nest is. This is a guy called Peter Kennedy from Exeter University in the UK. He's come over and did a lot of work in Jersey. I just wanted to show this, to show that the depth of how much people are trying to keep out invasive pests, you know, because this is a real problem. But it's not the answer, because there's still loads of them out there. We're just kind of tinkering at the edge. And there's a picture of the dogs they use. There's the nest in the tree. It just gives you an idea of what we're doing, but almost how futile our attempts are if you get an established new invasive pest.
And it just goes to show you how expensive it is, how expensive invasive species can be like this. Because I mean, look at all the money in just the last 3 pictures, how much it costs to train those dogs, to pay that guy to, like Peter, to do his job. And then I don't know how much that lift costs, but that lift to rent is not cheap. So it's so much money involved.
It's absolutely frightening, you know. The cost is enormous, you know. So I just wanted to say kind of hats off to Washington State, because I saw them from the start, and because I was thinking, my God, they've got the giant Japanese hornet. And what it is, if you look on Instagram sometimes and you follow beekeepers, you see pictures of other people digging out the giant Japanese hornet in Asia. And these nests are they're like the size of a chest of drawers. You know, they go down about 4 foot into the ground. And these people digging them out have got obviously the full suits on, like you saw Washington State.
Oh, they're crazy thick.
They are totally covered in hornets. And that's the size of the nest you get. You know, it's just worth making those resources available to keep those under control. So if someone says, I think we've got an outbreak, throw the resources at it, because the alternative is what we've got, you know.
Billions of dollars of damages down the road, you know, if you don't control it. And hopefully some of the people like yourself, I have no opinion because I don't know enough about these things, but some people feel like yourself that Washington maybe has got a hold and actually eliminated all of them. Were they able to like fully identify that there was only those 2 queens reproduced? So they think
at the moment they've only found, as far as I know from what I've read, they've only found 2 nests, and those were definitely directly related to the previous first nest.
How do we know that I don't know
anymore?
Okay. Well, and obviously they're still looking around, and they've got some traps out, and if something else crops up, and they're getting a broad area around that section. So, I mean, that would just be amazing though, if they actually prevented that from being able to take off. What they'll do is
they'll trap quite prolifically and hard in the area where the first nest was, just in case, and also in the areas where the last 2 nests were found, in case any queens were able to leave the nest earlier, because sometimes they do. There's a thing that sometimes these nests get really big, and they talk about wasps having multiple queens. You've seen some of these leather what do you call wasps? Yellow jacket movies, you know, like where you see yellow jacket nests. They're just gigantic nests. There's one with this guy in the car, and he's having a joke, and he's the beekeeper in the car, and he's sitting next to this like massive. They reckon they have multiple queens, and that's why they get so big. But there's also talk, even though the specialists say they don't, but other people who treat them. I know an Asian Hornet treater guy here who works for a separate company. He's sure he's seen more than 2 queens in one nest, because they get really big.
So one thing I'm going to ask you, now we have your European hornets here, and I've actually only dealt with them one time in a serious manner. I've been keeping bees for uh 19 seasons now or something like that. And out of that, I've seen them a couple times, but I've actually only had 1 year where I felt like they were actually making any type of significant impact. We had a nest that was close by. It was over at my neighbor's place. We finally found it, and we went ahead and eliminated it because the biggest problem we were having with them wasn't so much of bees. Bees was an issue. You could definitely see them around the hives, which was unusual, and they were big. But primarily what I didn't like is we'd leave, lights on the porch or something like that. And every time we go in the house, there'd be like 8 to 10 of them up there, and they drop down, and like my kid, I didn't want him to step on them or anything. And so, but you guys, that's native for you all.
Yeah.
So I know that you guys differentiate, the European versus the Asian, but for people over here in the United States, a lot of people see those European ones and they're like, we've got Japanese murder hornets, we've got them, and they're a little bit smaller, but they're not near as bad. So if you hate those things, we really don't want these other ones getting over.
I have to say, but before I kind of understood which one was which and got a little bit more educated about them, and I'm not saying that people who don't know them aren't educated. It's pretty frightening when you see something that big that's yellow, because we all know that yellow means danger. We know it means danger on a yellow jacket. We know it means it's going to sting you. And when you see something that big dropping down on your table at night, it's petrifying. You're like, where the hell is it? Oh, it's like.
So I got a question for you. Maybe you know the answer to this one. So someone's wondering, like, how far north, how cold of weather can they survive and be successful in? Do you have a general idea?
Yeah, well, the map I showed you before, they made incursions to the UK, and there is the barrier across the sea, okay? But if you imagine what, as I said before, generally happens is most of the nests that are made north of where I am have issues with not being able to build up quickly in the spring. So they don't generally get very big by August, September time. In some years they might, and with global warming, if that's what we're experiencing, I always say that, we don't really know yet, but it looks like it. It looks like they're maybe going to be able to advance further. But the nests we have generally aren't that big here. They look big, but the ones I showed you further south, that's the nest you'd expect to have a full year's growth, where ours don't really get going until June, July. So I wouldn't think we're going to have too much of a problem. I don't think I said in my talk, when I do my talk on it, I don't ever think that the Asian Hornet will ever have a major problem in the UK, because they have a lot of foot soldiers, big population, same population as France, but 3 times less space. If you imagine, it's divided by 3 the space. So they've got a lot of foot soldiers and a lot of people with apps. So they've done, is exactly my point, that they can control it. They all go, oh no, there's an Asian Hornet, it's a disaster. Then they go, hang on a minute, because the national bee unit's on its way up. They track it in 2 days, and they do a fantastic job, and they record it, trace it, find out where it came from. And I think every single one that they've traced has come back to the French one. So it's coming over on a boat, things like that.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to be a major problem, but they will go in Europe. They will go east. There's no doubt about that. They are going to go into Germany. They're going to go into probably the Urals, all through there eventually. And that's the problem. They're probably dreading it.
No, I got a question for you. So the traps that you purchased from Vita Pharma, is there like a website that people can go, and I know that there's some things that can be purchased in Europe but can't be purchased here in the United States due to legal ramifications. But let's say we get them, and we're, beekeepers in that area are wanting to, let's say they find in Washington, oh, wow, there's a couple more that we missed. And there's beekeepers in that area that are wanting to participate. Obviously, I'm sure you can contact Washington State. Maybe they can help you, put out, baits, things to kind of get information and track them, or could you go to Vita Pharma and actually get those here in the US? And
you could do, but Vita Pharma generally only dispatch to France, I believe. But there's other beekeeping companies that you can easily Google up. You can just put an Asian Hornet trap, and it comes up with, or it's called Piège Frelon Asiatique. Okay, the Frelon is the name of the hornet. Piège is the trap. Okay, but you can Google it up. You can use Google Translate. You'll suss it out. A beekeeping company might actually ship to you wherever you want. But I'll say one thing: there's no point in trapping anywhere unless you see, or there's been hornets in that area that you want to check out. because you don't want to cause bycatch. We do. The whole thing about this is we're working with nature, but we're trying to help it when we need. So we're happy to have a little bit of bycatch, some flies going in, some mosquito web, or we're happy to lose a few beneficial insects if we have to, at the expense of trying to find some information, whether there's any in the area. Fair enough, but I want to ask beekeepers not to put traps out for Asian hornets when there's no reason to anywhere nearby, because you'll do more harm than good. If you want to trap wasps, yes, put wasp traps out. If you want to trap whatever, but be specific. So just don't waste your time, use your resources carefully. That's what I'd ask. But yes, you can get the traps. The French site has them, but what we do in France is we usually, as a collective, we go to a beekeeping. I'm with a group called the Groupe Sanitaire des Abeilles 22, GDSA, and they buy them in bulk. We get them a little bit cheaper. So I'll put probably 100 out this spring in the 14 apiaries, because you have to. It's a massive job, but and so we can. I've never worked out actually how much they cost each, but the great thing about the new traps is, and this is why I actually do like them, and I'm not a fan of favoring commercial things big, because they're big brother, they're the big operators.
Sure that they are, but as long as it works, that's what we need. Yeah,
the traps are just finished. The traps are really good because they've actually changed the composite now. They used to be a much softer goblet. Okay, now they last for years. You can stand them, they don't break. They've realized that people are happy to buy them, but they will last several years if you look after them. The biggest problem I have is one will blow off and I'll mow over it with the mower or the strimmer, you know. Yeah. There's that trap, you know.
Whoops.
Yeah, whoops. But, you know, there's really, I just hope that people out there realize that it's another thing we have to do. We don't have small hide beetle yet. So we're kind of dealing with Asian hornet, you're dealing with small hide beetle. It's like, you've got that, we've got this, you know. But there's all things we have to do, you know.
You know, I want to just remind everybody who's tuned in late, this will be available on YouTube, so you can go back and watch this. Richard has pictures of these traps and some of the recipe for making some homemade, what was it, red currant, some type of wine.
It's about 6 parts beer, multi beer, 6 parts white wine, cheap white wine, and about 1 part blackcurrant cordial. Blackcurrant cordial, thick blackcurrant cordial, and that gives a cross section of smells and sugars that hornets will home in on. So it works really well.
And Richard has a YouTube channel. I've been watching it for years. He's got great videos. He's got videos that actually show more about the traps and about dealing with the Asian hornets, different traps in comparison, because the homemade trap seem to be catching really good, and it looks good until you compare it to those other traps, and then the other ones are like, you know, really kicking their butt. And also you got a lot of videos on queen rearing, setting up the cell builders, handling virgins, queens coming out the incubator, and care for those, videos on, you know, just extraction and honey production, just all kinds of beekeeping videos. So y'all need to make sure that you check out his videos, and you know, this has been,
and obviously subscribe to the channel.
Subscribe to the channel. It's something that Laurel keeps telling me to say in the videos, and I keep forgetting. And she's like, you forgot again to say subscribe. But you know, I'm going to get one of these days.
Yeah, I kind of look at it like, I like to, I've listened to Ian Stepper a lot about this, where it's kind of doing videos is like so easy when you enjoy doing it, and it's like you just knock one out. You don't have to edit it at all, and it's because you feel that you're just sharing what you do, but you're honest about it. You're just sharing the difficulties you have as a beekeeper, but it has the energy, and when you compare it to other people, you're like, yeah, we're part of something, you know. And when you get really good, I get mostly amazing responses. We've all had a few trolls. People get jealous for no reason. I'm not in it to outdo anybody. I'm just in it to share what I do. Yes, we get a little bit of revenue from it, but it's hardly anything in comparison to the work, as you well know. The amount of work you put in, if you got paid for the hours you put into YouTube, you wouldn't be doing these anymore. But you know, it's like your conference you just did. It reflects the energy that you want to bring into beekeeping, you know. And I just want to say, I'm probably on behalf of everybody, even though I haven't been there this year, and I'll hopefully be there next year. Sure. You know, you've done an amazing job, and you're going to go embarrassed and modest here, but because you always are. But you know, I haven't known you for a long time, but what I know about you, you're just the kind of guy that brings everything together, you know. And I think everyone would agree with me that when I see pictures of the conference, I'm just seeing that, like, energy. And that's what this is all about, the YouTube people sharing stuff. It's not one outdoing the other. It's just kind of, this is what I'm doing. What do you think about it? You know, and it's like, it's really cool. You know, it
Well,
just has that.
We're a team is what we are. And we're collaborating, and you're educating me right now. You're educating hundreds of other people, and I'm sure soon to be thousands as they watch this video. And it's important because life is really balance. It's so easy to go to one extreme or the other, and that is what we tend to do as humans. But it's complicated, and balance is harder than going to one extreme or the other. And so a lot of times we find camps and we kind of get into, this is the only way to do it, and this is the only way to do it. But if we can get into a group, which I believe that we have right now between YouTube and the Hive Life conferences this way, of a group of by and large open-minded people who are just concerned about bees and learning more, and being excited to learn more, and being okay with being educated. Even if this person over here doesn't have as many hives as me, I can still learn something from him, that kind of thing. That's what I love about guys like Bob. He's running 2,000 colonies, got a crew, massive operation, humble as all get out. He's inquisitive. He loves the beekeeping culture. And this conference that we've put on, I think there's a lot of people out there that think that beekeeping is a dying art form. Our YouTube channels, the Hive Life Conference, it's showing it's not a dying art form. There's a lot of passionate people that are ready to not only see beekeeping continue to do well, but even do better than what it's been doing. And it's going to do that because, for once, I feel like because of this collaboration, we're getting ahead. We're preparing, and unfortunately, you all weren't able to do that. But since you all are sharing with us here in the United States, if that becomes a problem in the future, we can make some efforts. And I'm sure what Washington State did was probably one of the first things they did is reach over to places in Europe and other countries as well. And they said, hey, what are the issues? What can we learn from you all so we can get ahead of this? So it's definitely a huge advantage. And I just want to say thanks for, coming on and everything. I also want to say real quick, thanks to Steve Chubb, who's been a big supporter of chats like this and what we're doing. I'm actually going to be also interviewing another fella, Cameron Jack with the University of Florida, on oxalic acid with mites, because what happens with the media is it's all about the clicks, right? It's really all that matters. It's clicks, it's money, and there's nothing wrong with making money. I don't have an issue with that, but it's doing things sometimes that are false or partially false, like the whole murder hornet, and only pushing information that it's all gloom and doom. We also need to push the positive. That's why you're on here showing us that there is a way to live with Asian hornets. It's not great, but it's possible, and there are things that we can do. And, talking to Cameron Jack, though, for years, we have been mishandling oxalic acid usage, not because it's been unsafe for our health or the bees' health, but we're not using it dialed in appropriately. We're not using it. We don't fully understand it. Because we don't fully understand it, we're not using it to the fullest advantage we can. And the information that he's going to share is going to educate me and other people on what's going on, what they're finding out. And from what I talked to him on the phone, I'm definitely excited about it, because here in the United States, we use oxalic acid sublimation, and we're not using it we're not using it the wisest way that's going to be best for our time and the best for the bees and kill the most mites. So that's what this is all about, Richard. I'm really hoping that we can have you at the conference this coming year. And if nothing else, we need to get you there as a VIP guest, but maybe we can get up there and shoot the bull and poke fun at the Frenchies or something like that.
We're all up for it. I mean, I know loads of beekeeping French people over here, and they're really awesome beekeepers, to be honest. What I will say this, and I shouldn't really say, but what I think the French miss out on is English speaking, because I think they're not able to communicate out of France. And I think there are fantastic beekeepers in France, but there's also the beekeepers that I know that are quite well known, they all speak English. And it's really a shame that the other ones don't, because they're not able to. I'm so fortunate where I am here that I've got a great place to keep bees. We've got issues, but I can also reach out, like you do. And here we are now. I mean, I'm in France, you're in Central America. I mean, it's just phenomenal, the technology. We've got a crystal clear picture. It's I'm disappointed you didn't have your flag today, but
I know. Well,
I went from hell to get there. I had to go to my next neighbor's cupboards to get that,
Well, the thing of it is, I figured the French flag would be about that big, like yours. And I didn't want to show off. We Americans are already good at making,
I'm going to order the biggest flower I can get for the next Zoom I do. So
it's going to be like that big or something.
It's because I think Ian started off something where, and one of my friends, beekeepers, actually emailed me tonight and texted me tonight and said, I hope you're going to have a flag in the background because, Cayman's going to, and Ian does. And I thought, oh, no, you started something off now. So I've got to reach up to that mark,
Ian's responsible for a lot of things. He really should apologize more. The Canadians, it's just great lie. There's a lot of lies. And I love all the crap that we throw at the French, and I love the stuff we throw at the Canadians, and they throw stuff back at us. I love how Ian says that we're Yankees, because if he knew people south of Kentucky, we hate being called Yankees down here. And of course, some of the people in Europe think we're all cowboys toting 45 caliber revolvers everywhere we go. Yeah. And, that, we're not all Texas, but Tennessee's not too far off, really, to be honest. Yeah. But at the same time, we love picking on you guys. And Ian, he got that Canadian flag, and I got a lot of feedback. I'm like, are you going to let Ian have a Canadian flag and you're not going to represent America, the greatest country in the world? And I'm like, well, I guess I need to do something about that. And it was so bad that Don Bearden, one of our subscribers, was like, came, I sent you a US flag, make sure to hang it up. And so, it's Ian started the thing. So it's all good. It's all in good fun. And pride of country is really important, especially right now. We've got to, people got to be involved. And I won't get into the politics, but at the same time, the people are the ones that really make up the country, So just like with beekeepers have to be involved in beekeeping, we have to be involved, because even though, there's researchers and PhDs and maybe there's professionals, all of us are important. Sometimes it's hobby beekeepers that come up with new devices that are really helpful. They'll come up with new ideas. The honey extractor was not created by some big time commercial beekeeper. It was created by a small guy that had not even been into beekeeping very long and had an extractor in a totally different industry, and said, you know what, this whole crushing combs to get honey out, it's a waste of comb. It's time consuming. There's got to be a better way to do this. And he's like, I wonder if we can fling this stuff out of here and an extraction type setup. And sure enough, it did. And it's been revolutionary. So it takes all of us chipping in and of all sizes. And I love the collaboration. That's my favorite part of what I do, is getting the opportunity to have this time with you. It's been a blast. And
well, no, it's amazing. I mean, getting back to what you said before, I've been to America a little bit, and everywhere I've been, I've been to Hawaii, I've been to Mike Palmer's in Vermont. I've spent a bit of time other places, but only short times. But whenever I've gone to a different place, it's amazing how everybody not slags off, but has opinions of other people, like you said, about we don't want to be called Yankees. I absolutely love that. When I'm in the UK, you see, I know that you've got so much localization in the UK. You've got, the West Country, you've got Manchester, you've got all these different areas, and they're all local accents. And I understand now about how local the accents are also in America. It's amazing when you start to meet people from different places. It's just brilliant. It's and obviously with COVID, I haven't been able to travel at all. I mean, I could have risked going away, but I think it's the same as Ian going to the conference. We had this problem where if I went away and I tested positive and so many people were getting it, it wasn't worth the risk of having to confine at your expense in a hotel on your own for a week, before you can move on again. It's just so much hassle. So none of us have been able to travel. Next year, I am almost certainly coming to see you guys at the conference, regardless of whether you want me or not. I'm going to come anyway because I just think it's an amazing opportunity. But I'm hoping to because of my personal arrangements, I'm actually going to be able to I might come over Christmas and do a Christmas tour, because
there you go.
I'll be able to come earlier and do other things before and end up finishing off at the high of life, because I am like everybody, I've got kids. And I've got to work kind of around it, but I've got options, and I can have people look after my kids. But the easiest thing would be to have my whole Christmas period away, which would be absolutely fantastic.
Oh, that'd be, we'd have a blast. I hope that we can do that.
I just think we've got so much ahead. Obviously, we've got all this year to deal with. I've got to find somewhere to extract my honey this year, because I'm building a whole new honey house, but it won't be ready. It won't even be off the ground until next autumn. So I'm extracting in a big insulated container that I'm still waiting permission for. It's still at the docks 400 miles away, and I've got no extraction kit. So it's going to be a really interesting year, and there's loads happening. I've got stress coming out my ears already. But it's going to be good. We're going to rest positive. We're going to have a great year, and we're all going to keep showing. I don't know if we'll be able to carry on like we're doing at the moment, because we're all going to be so busy, which it's a shame, because every year we get to this point, don't we, where we all think, oh, it's all right, there's loads of time. And suddenly you go to April and go, oh my God, we're 2 weeks ahead, and I've got to get frames in there. And before you know it, everything is lost. You just straight into it. That's it. It's gone. And then for the next 6 months, it's just beekeeping.
It is totally that way every year. Well, but beekeepers are good at one thing, and that's lying to ourselves, saying that this year it's going to be better.
yeah, absolutely. This year I've got everything planned. Everything's organized. It's funny. I've been working a lot of home on the garden here, because I let that go a bit, and I didn't keep on top of it, but I've got it all up straight now. I'm really pleased. So that's given me like us beekeepers get, when you have that inner kind of, not in a peace, but you have that feeling that you're kind of almost ahead. It's a very risky thing to feel as a beekeeper, as you know. And we never say I'm ahead, but when you almost feel you're there, you just got to keep that momentum going. Because then if you can stop in July and go, I think I'm still there, then you are probably there in July. But it's if you fall apart in May, it's just damage limitation after that, isn't it? It's so difficult.
Well, Yasmin from Sweden is saying that you guys need to get on the same flight to come to the conference. So I've been getting a lot of emails from people in the UK, or New Zealand, Australia, all kinds of different places, and looking to come to our conference. And I'm actually at a hotel right now that I'm scoping out to see about having the Hive Life conference at in the future. We like where we're at right now in the Smokies, and I'm not saying we're going to go away from that, but we also owe it to everybody who's coming to look into options that may be better, and or may not be. So that's just part of it. I'm really looking forward to long-term turning into an international conference, which I feel like it's going to do that, because one of the great things about getting over into Europe and Western Asia is just the thousands of years of beekeeping culture and the different techniques. And obviously this collaboration today has been wonderful. I firmly believe, and I've loved it. I appreciate you coming on and everything, Richard, but it's that kind of thing that's going to help us get ahead of these problems, because they are going to keep arising. Even if you study history back, 1890, the early 1900s, new pests coming into the United States. We've always had something, some of them worse than others, but there's always some new problems coming around. So we're gonna have to work together, and we just look at it as a challenge that will be made more fun because we're doing it as a team instead of as just individuals alienated by ourselves. And it's going to be a wonderful bee culture that we have. So Richard, I actually have to scoot, but we need to do something like this again. Maybe I can hop on your channel and you can.
Well, I'd love to. I'd like to invite you if it's possible in a couple of weeks' time. When we've worked out a date and a time. Yeah, and we'll have a chat on my side, and I'll get you on that. It'd be brilliant. We can run through some topics and talk about maybe some comparisons of beekeeping in France and in America. But I mean, what I've seen from you guys, you're all very similar, but we just do things slightly differently.
Yeah, well, we just do things better, but no big deal.
Well,
sorry, I just had.
No, it's all right. I'm good with that. I love that. It's great banter, but I was going to say we do it better here, but you got in there first,
it's
because in America your flows are bigger, they're longer, you get more nectar, it's
that's
understandable,
right.
But but our honey's better quality, so that's all I can say,
I think it's cool. It's real cool. So, again, Richard, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to talking either in another Zoom or just off the Zoom with you in the future. And man, this has been a blast. So thanks so much, buddy, for coming on.
Thanks, Cayman. I'll just say if anyone wants to ask me a question via Cayman or post it in the comments when you post this after, we'll also try and answer some of the questions. If there's any questions when we do another Zoom in a few weeks, which would be brilliant. Have a look at my YouTube channel. I'm on YouTube, Richard Noel Bees in Brittany. You'll find it on there. I'm also on Instagram. I'm on WhatsApp. Sorry, not WhatsApp. I'm obviously on WhatsApp, but I'm on Twitter as well, at Bees in Brittany. So if you want to send me a message, if you've got a question, I can't always answer all of them, and I've got to go back into my YouTube tonight. I've got like 40 questions to answer from the last video I did, which everyone seems to really like. So we were talking about these cages, the queen cages, cool. And one thing I was going to say was we do have bigger mites than you in America.
It almost sounds like you're from Texas or something. Everything's bigger, huh?
Bigger and better, you know.
Well, Furrow mites that big are not good. But
no, it's just great to start this collaboration, and I just hope it. Obviously, in the world, communication is always a problem, you know. But Zoom is like, to me, an amazing thing. I was very nervous at first. And even coming on tonight, I was like, my goodness me, you know, I'm got chatting to Cayman, you know, but it's going to be streamed live. I'm like, my goodness, you know, but it's just, like Ian says, you just got to ride the wave and enjoy it. And I think that all these things are out there, opportunities. They all give us the possibility of finding someone else who's done something similar, but maybe he's tweaked it. It's that sharing thing we talked about before that brings us together, you know. So I can't thank you enough. Thanks ever so much for having me on. And I hope we can, I hope we'll meet up for a start, but I hope we can do a couple of Zooms during the next few weeks before the season gets cracking, because before we get stressed and throw in everything else in life, you know, bees dying and too much honey, I've got to extract. Who cares about that? It's
always one extreme or the other, for sure. Can't keep up
rags to riches.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, this was great, Richard. Appreciate it, buddy. And we'll be talking in the future. Again, everybody, make sure to go to Richard's YouTube channel. See a lot of queen rearing videos, all kinds of stuff on these hornets and more. This video will be made available on YouTube, so you can rewatch any parts that you missed, recipes, traps, techniques, location, resources. Richard really laid out a great presentation. So again, thanks, Richard, and we'll see you in the future.
Good. Big thumbs up. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I wish you all well. And we'll speak to you again soon. Yeah, you will find a lot of these things I've talked about on my YouTube videos. So just have a trawl through. Any questions you want, bang a question up. We'll see what we can do. You know, so keep that momentum going, everybody. We'll all meet up sooner or later. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Richard. Bye.